Have you ever thought about getting surgery? I'm not talking about mandatory surgeries. I'm talking about plastic surgery. In Australia, plastic surgery is on the rise, and up to 6% of people are considering having some sort of plastic surgery in the last 12 months. And this can be driven by various facts such as social media, evolving beauty standards, or a personal preference. Today, I have a special guest on the show who is going to speak about her experience with surgery, but also plastic surgery. Trigger warning, this topic may cover sensitive issues such as eating disorders, disordered eating, breast augmentation, and more. So always listen with care. Welcome to the What's Eating You podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie, and I'm a psychologist, published author, and public speaker here to educate and validate. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the What's Eating You podcast. Today we have Amie Layton, who's going to speak about her experience. Now, Amie is a friend of mine who, funnily enough, she's not only an event planner and has been planning events for the last 10 years, we also met at an event. And last year she started her own business and does weddings, does corporate events, and she is absolutely amazing. So Amie, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thanks so much for having me. It's so funny. I was actually just thinking about how we met in an event, and then we've been through so much chatting since you moved to Queensland and seeing each other grow, and I'm good. I am still recovering. My surgery was only about 8 weeks ago now, but just here for the ride and feeling so much better since I did it.
Yes, and that's what we're here to talk about. So basically, we met at an event a few years ago, and I thought, wow, this girl has a really good vibe about her. And I always love meeting event planners because you just seem to just have it together, or at least you have it together for everyone else. You're always just putting other people before yourselves, making sure other people's stuff goes smoothly. And I remember you reached out to me in Thailand, and I can't remember what it was about my stories that made you start talking about your surgery. Do you remember what it was?
I think you asked for good topics that people would want to hear on the podcast. And I will say I'm a bit biased because I am an avid listener, because I have suffered from bulimia in the past as well. I feel like we maybe met for a bit of a reason at that point in time, because then once I started following you and read your book and things like that as well, I realized that I probably still had some underlying issues from when I was a teenager and probably didn't fully overcome it, because I suppose when we were young, I believe we're in the same age group. So when we were taught various ways by doctors or our parents or whatever that we should be doing this or to overcome it in a certain way, it just wasn't fully formed in terms of the way that we actually did deal with it. And so then only into my late 20s did I realize I probably still had some issues with food. And that's then turned into those body dysmorphia problems that I suppose led to this surgery overall.
Yes, and I want to talk about that body dysmorphia and how we got here. So basically 8 weeks ago, let's just get straight to the juice. You had a breast augmentation. Was it a lift? And you tell us exactly why and what it was.
Yeah, so I actually had a breast reduction. So I, late last year, was just doing a self-breast check, and I can't stress the importance of that enough to women as well. So just to provide some context, I was a H cup. So if women know the sizes, they go through A, B, C, double D, E, F, H, G, H,
I.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't even think it meant that. Wow, okay. Your whole life?
No. So basically, I did develop quite early. When my mum took me to my first bra around 13, 14, I think I was already like in a large B, C, like I surpassed A straight up. And then I did develop quite quickly. By the end of high school, I was in a double D. And it does run in my family. My family is quite busty, but not to this level. Where it really hit, I think, was during COVID. Obviously, Melbourne, we had the strictest lockdowns in the world. We had 6, 7 of them. I don't even know anymore. And towards the last couple, I did quite well in the first few, but then towards the last few where it was you could only go 5 kilometers radius from your home. And just those things really, I like to convince myself they didn't impact me, but on reflection, they really did. Yeah. And I felt like
we all had to be grateful. Or grateful for got a job, or grateful this and grateful that. And I feel like I fall into the same boat, not to take over, but I thought, oh, you know what? I'm so lucky I've got a job. I'm so lucky that I'm still working. And you don't notice it after. It was like a delayed emotional onset.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that, because I obviously, there was no event, so I obviously lost my job, and I substituted it by studying so that I still had something routine to do with my day, which I think got me through the first couple, but I obviously smashed through that. And then the last couple, I just, again, turned to food, as we do. And I also was reading into the effects that it can have on the body, not just from the eating or the food you're consuming or the alcohol that you might be consuming, but also the routine that you have. So when you get up and you put on a bra, for example, that actually restricts the blood flow to a certain degree with a wired bra. Similar to how if men put on tight underwear, it restricts their blood flow. So I think it was actually somewhat to do with that the combination of all those things was actually causing my breasts to enlarge, because I wasn't wearing a bra as often because I was just sitting at home. It sounds really crazy, but the amount of Googling I did once I found that piece of information, and obviously Google's not always reliable, don't get me wrong, but it just made a little bit of sense to me that, 6 days out of the week, I wasn't wearing a bra, or I was wearing a sports bra as opposed to a wired bra. So it was a bit more freeing and letting the blood get in there. And I don't know, they grew 3 sizes, and I thought, okay, it's just a bit of weight. Once COVID's over and I'm back in the gym and back into the routine, it'll come back off. The thing was that I got back into my routine. I managed to lose my COVID weight, but I didn't lose anything from that area. And it really impacted me. It had obviously already impacted me prior, but it just, like, in terms of back pain, neck pain, obviously being in events, going to events, and all these girls wearing these beautiful dresses and crop tops were in at that time, and I couldn't find any outfits that fit. So that's where it really started for me, in terms of going back into that dark hole of not being able to look as pretty as this person over here, or why does my body look different to hers? And so I know in your book you talk about like mirror illusion, and I definitely suffered from that for sure. And it hadn't been that bad since I was 16. And then, I was doing just a self-breast examination and found a lump in my left side. And thankfully it was okay. I went and had it checked out. It wasn't anything to be concerned about. But my GP, who's amazing, did actually say to me, you've been talking about all the pain you're having, and why don't we just use this as an excuse to go and refer you and get a breast reduction at the same time, take all that tissue out. And fortunately, it did take me a while, because obviously the financing was a big portion for me, because it is around $23,000
if you get is surgery covered if you have back pain, and how does it work financially?
So it took me a while, because that was obviously my biggest hurdle, but I did find out through my mum. She said a girl at her work had it done, and you can actually apply for compassionate release of your super. So it took me probably about 10 weeks to go through the whole process, because it is quite a thing. You have to get your referral to your surgeon. Your surgeon has to sign off on it. Your GP has to also sign a letter to the ATO saying that, yes, we agree this is a necessary surgery. It's affecting life and the way she works and everything like that. And then you apply all that through the ATO for the amount. So you have to get full quotes from the surgeon for your stays, your anesthesiologist, all of those things, so that the ATO can match the amounts, so that you're not being fraudulent. And then they basically say, they go through them, and then they say yes or no. They write a letter to your super fund saying, yep, we've confirmed all this, we're happy for her to take it out of her super, and then you send that to your super fund, and the super fund basically gives you the money. But then also referring back, you then need to prove that you've paid all those bills for the tax year so that your super fund knows that you didn't just take it out and go and do whatever you wanted with it. So it is quite a process, but yeah, for any necessary surgery. So not just for, in my case, the breast reduction, if it's something that is affecting you, let's say it was a nasal septum for a nose job and it's really affecting the way you're breathing, you can get it for that. Anything along those lines that's affecting your quality of life, you can apply for your super in Australia.
Wow, that is so incredible to know, and thanks for sharing that. So you had a breast reduction. It sounded like it was good timing. You'd found the lump. They said, let's do it now. Take us through recovery, because I have this belief in my head. I've had a few girlfriends go through different breast surgeries, and in their mind they think, this is going to be it. I'm going to have the body, I'm going to lose the weight, I'm going to have the boobies, it's all going to be excellent. But because of the recovery and the process, and they're not exercising and they might be binge eating, they actually gain weight throughout that process, and it's not what they thought. Was that the experience for you, or what was your recovery like?
Yeah, 100%. So for me, basically for them to match my size when they reduced them, that I needed to lose as much weight as I could. Like, they say it in a nice way. They basically say, we suggest that you lose as much as you would like so that we can match it to the proportions of your body. For me, that my goal was 10 kilos and I got there. So I wanted to go down to ideally like a C cup, which is what they made me. They don't promise a size the way that they do it, because obviously if you buy, and I'm sure every woman knows this, if you buy a bra from one place, it can be a C. Another place, it can be a D. Same as you buy a pair of pants from one, you're a 10. A pair of pants from another place, you're a 12, which is ridiculous in my book. But so they don't promise a size, but they proportion it out to you. So I managed to lose 10 kilos prior to the surgery.
How long? What was that time frame?
It was about 3 months. Yeah, just from eating really well. Not that I was not eating well, but obviously working in events, sometimes you get home from an event at 11 o'clock at night and you're starving. And so you have a late night snack before bed. And as you would know, that throws off your whole metabolism before you sleep. And so it was those little things that were really throwing my body out of whack, because I was hungry before I'd go to bed because of just the times I was working or things like that. Yeah. So I just worked really hard to make sure I didn't do those little things that I knew were affecting me. But just eating really healthy, going to the gym more consistently, that's always been a real downfall for me. I'll go 5 days a week and then I'll go 3 days the next week. And then that motivation for me getting to the gym has always been my biggest flaw, and I know that. So I was just, because I had something to work towards, I think it motivated me more. I knew I had to do it by that date to get to that point. So I managed to get there and that was fine. And yeah, like you say, you think you're going to have the surgery, all's going to be well. And that was definitely not the case. So the surgery went fine. Everything was good. I'm healing all fine, recovering well. But obviously you can't work out for about 8 weeks. So even for the first 2 weeks, like I couldn't lift my arms above my head or like anything like that. The first week pretty much was just sleeping, as it is after any surgery. But then once I started to feel well enough to even just be back on emails or anything like that, I still didn't have the energy or anything to get up and be able to even just go for a light walk, which is what they suggested. If you feel okay, go for a 10-minute walk around the block. But what people don't, and they do tell you in all the information, but what people don't realize, especially having a surgery when you're a bit younger as opposed to now, I'm 30, is the anesthetic really knocks you about. It's dried out. Yeah, it's really dried out my hair. It's dried out my skin. It makes you really tired. And they do say that it can affect you up to 6 months. Like you'll notice you'll be really tired when you try and get back into things. Yeah. Then up until now, it's been 8 weeks now, I've just had really low energy. And obviously, because haven't been able to go to the gym until next week, I can start again. I've pretty much gained back all the weight that I lost prior to it. Just feeling really, not just really lethargic from the anesthetic, but at the same time, gaining back that feeling of, okay, what did I even do this for? My body now looks worse than it did prior. Even though it doesn't, I've instantly had relief. Yeah, I've instantly had relief in back pain, neck pain, all those things that I wanted to fix. That's basically gone. But I've now got a big belly back and I've got extra weight on me, which is natural because obviously I'm just recovering and it'll go away once I'm back in the gym. But it's so hard to mentally get your head across the fact that's what your body needs to heal, and it's storing that fat to be able to use it while you're sleeping. And so, yeah, mentally it's been a real struggle because, like you say, your other girlfriend had that, they think it's going to be like perfect the moment it's done, but it's not.
Yes. And here's a bit of a controversial question. Do you think that doctors should be recommending people, if they're going to lose weight, lose it before your breast augmentation, or should they do the breast augmentation in the body the person comes to the appointment in?
They don't say, at least with me, so I did a lot of research, and the surgeon I went with, he's been doing it over 25 years. He's the best in Melbourne, one of the best in Australia. But so he didn't say it to me outright, like, you need to lose 10 kilos for us to fit you into a C. It's just, we would highly recommend that you lose a little bit more than what you've currently got, because currently your body's storing fat to keep up with this size. Whereas if you can lose a little bit more, then when we give you that size, it'll look more in proportion. So they suggest it, but they also don't say that it's a matter of life or death. You know what I mean? They'll still give you what you want with their expertise to fit your proportions. I think that's the biggest thing, is they're just not going to give you, same as if you were to get an augmentation on some of those shows and things, they like, that's too large, that's dangerous, we're not going to give you more than what the medical board recommends or whatever it is. So it's, they just say it in a really polite way that it'll look a lot nicer because it'll fit your body better if you can lose X amount.
Yeah. Okay. And I imagine if you are in a healthy mindset, you could take that feedback on board. But I imagine a lot of women would be like, yeah, that's it, I'm going to lose all the weight, get the boobs, everything's going to be different. But yeah, like we spoke about, it often doesn't happen that way. So you recover, you can't exercise for 8 weeks, which does a lot for your mental health, because a lot of people exercise to feel good in their body, in their mind, and the weight that you had lost for the surgery had come back on during your recovery.
Yes, obviously from having an eating disorder, I try and practice some healthy habits in that I don't weigh myself every day or anything like that. So when I say I gained it all back, I don't actually know if it was a full 10 kilos because I never jumped on the scale because I figured that would be worse for myself mentally.
But tell ourselves the worst. Even if we haven't gained it, we tell ourselves we have, because just by looking, and this is why I'm not against weighing. A lot of body positivity people say, don't weigh yourself, throw the scales out. Whereas sometimes never weighing yourself can actually be detrimental because it doesn't give us a chance to disprove really negative beliefs, but you feel like you have. Is that right?
Yeah, I definitely put on some kilos. Like, it might not be the full 10 that I lost. And I feel like it probably isn't the full 10 that I lost, because if I was to think about it, I definitely am not as big as what I was. And they took a kilo out of each side. So instantly out of each breast. So I probably, even if I gained 8 kilos, then I'm still short too. So that's a positive way to look at it. But yeah, no, I definitely, like, for me, when I had bulimia as a kid, that was my thing, is I would weigh myself morning, night. And for me, that was a really bad habit. And it was, okay, even if I was 0.1 higher, that was bad. So I knew that while I was in that mindset of recovery and gaining that back, for me personally, weighing myself would be worse. But when I start going back to the gym and I know that I can then incorporate the healthy eating with the exercise again, I will weigh myself every few days. It's just while I couldn't exercise, and that, like you say, that's also really important for the mental health side of it, not just the actual physical side of it. For me personally, that wasn't the right decision.
Yes, okay. And the other thing is, you were saying you were exercising, because I always say, okay, at that time in your life, what were you doing to get that result? And you said, I was exercising 5 times a week, I was consistent, I was really eating carefully, but obviously you cannot maintain that when you are recovering. So I imagine that it's so natural for your weight to change to meet your needs at that recovery time as well.
Yeah. The other thing is, in all the information they give you, like the nurses were actually really surprised. Like, I came out of the anesthetic and the first thing I said was, because you have to fast before you go in. So I was like, yeah, I went in first thing in the morning. So basically I had dinner the night before, and then I wasn't allowed to eat until after my surgery, and mine was scheduled, I think, at 9:30 or something. So I wasn't allowed to have breakfast or anything like that. And the first thing I said to them when I woke up was, can I eat now? But a lot of women actually get really nauseous, or a lot of people, I should say, get really nauseous from that anesthetic. So they were really surprised that I was hungry, and they started me off with just a sandwich, like just take little bites and see how you go, in a little sip of water. And I smashed it, and I was like, can I have more? Like, I was, yeah. So that was actually really positive, because they say a lot of people end up throwing up for 3 days consecutively because the anesthetic makes them sick. So I suppose that's the other way to look at it, is I was fully prepared to not be eating. And I was like, and again, this is really not healthy, but in my mind, I was like, cool, at least I won't put on weight for 3 days, because I'll be throwing up and I'll be, I will. And it's that body dysmorphia concept of, great, I won't put on any weight for at least 3 days after, because I'll be sick from it. But it was the opposite for me. My body was like, no, you need the energy. Your brain needs the energy. Eat. And I didn't throw up at all. So everyone reacts differently and recovers differently. And that's the other thing is, yeah, I was hungry straight away. I definitely ate less than what I normally would, because I was sleeping a lot, obviously. But I still needed that food. And yeah, as opposed to someone who might be sick for the first week and not eat anything, which is also not healthy.
No, and everyone's expectation is different, but I think every woman would be like, oh, I'm not going to eat, the anesthetic's going to make me sick. But when you're the opposite, you can often think, oh, what's wrong with me? Why am I feeling this? And you can think, am I doing something wrong? Am I meant to be hungry? And then questioning it, along the way. So how did you get through it mentally? Because were you eating as well to cope with emotions? Did your eating disorder habits come back? Would you say it was a lapse or a relapse?
Yeah, I would say I had a little bit of a relapse. It was definitely moments where, so what I did prior to the surgery, because I live alone, and obviously I had friends and stuff around me who would check in and things, but I basically meal prepped a heap of stuff prior to the surgery. So I had a freezer full of pastas and stir fries and different things. So that not only was I making sure that I was still getting veggies and decent meals, but also while I couldn't really move, all I had to do was put something in the microwave. I didn't have to actually cook anything. So that kind of covered me for the first week and a half. And then obviously making a bowl of cereal or something was fine. And they actually encourage that, because it gets the movement back and recovers faster if you just make a cup of tea or something, small movements like that. They say if you feel okay and you feel like you can, then do it. So that was covered me for the first 10 days or so. And then after that, I would say I still ate healthy. Like, I then was able to drive again. And so I did another grocery shop and all that sort of stuff. But I then, because I'd been in bed for over a week straight, just sleeping and eating when I needed to eat and watching Netflix, my mental state, because I hadn't really been outside or talking to anyone external or anything like that, it almost put me back in in that like COVID lockdown trauma state.
Yes.
And so that is what triggered, like, when I did go grocery shopping, I was like, oh, of course I'm going to get a couple blocks of chocolate. And not that I never eat chocolate or never eat desserts or anything like that. Like, I'm very much take tips from you. If you want to eat it, because you'll end up just binging it later if you don't. But I think I just very much overworked it, where I might usually just have a couple pieces of chocolate and that would satisfy me. Like I say, because I wasn't going outside as much or having my normal routine of going to the gym and then having a shake when I got back from the gym or anything like that, it was just a bit more than what I usually would have. And so that definitely contributed, because it was also a little bit of that comfort eating. Like, I definitely felt, okay, I haven't interacted with anyone. I haven't been outside. and then it was a bad cycle of, I'm putting on weight, so I'm going to eat chocolate to feel better, but then that's going to make me put on more weight. And it was like, so yeah.
Did anyone, because I'm also thinking, you recovered alone. You live alone, don't you? And you recovered alone. I had a surgery too when I was maybe 17, but I was living in my family home. I had my mum, she was looking after me and all that. And I think that makes it easier. But do you think being alone contributed? You did say it brought back COVID vibes, but did you have people come and visit you?
Yeah, only once or twice though, because like my family's all up in Queensland, and my mum did offer to come down and stay for the first week, but I don't have a guest bedroom or anything. I live in a really tiny apartment, so it would have just been nothing for her to do. I don't even have a spare room for her to stay in here, so it would have made it really redundant. Yeah, so I had a surgery when I was 19, and I've been trying to think back and compare the two. And even things like my hair and my skin being really dry from the anesthetic, I think it's just as your body gets older, it copes with things differently as well. Because for that one, I was like you, I was recovering at home, and so I had my gallbladder taken out. And so that was obviously keyhole, but it was still quite intense, and things like not being able to eat certain things and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think like just having someone wait on you and bring stuff to you, and it was very, very different. So I don't know. It's, yeah, maybe being alone did affect it a little bit, but I don't know. I think maybe it's also just, getting older, your body recovers differently as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And you were saying with your body image from being young, having your gallbladder removed meant that you couldn't go on certain diets or eat certain things, and people will be trying to give you these recommendations. Like, what does your gallbladder actually do? And having it removed, how's that impacted your life? Because I don't know much about it, to be honest.
Yeah, so your gallbladder is like near your liver, and it basically filters before anything hits your stomach and your digestive system. It filters all your fat and protein and helps break it down before it hits your stomach. So anything basically high, so like red meat, really high in lots of protein, anything high in fats, so a lot of dairy, a lot of sugars, so anything processed really. So even things thinking like hot chips and fast foods, and even gluten, like too much gluten. Basically, it was the same. Like before I had that surgery, they put you on a really strict diet. All you can eat is basically like poached chicken, white rice, steamed veggies. And that was at the time where like soy milk and stuff was only just starting to come out. So trying to get a coffee or have that in your cereal or anything like that was just a nightmare. Now it's not too bad. But yeah, so basically I eat dairy-free like most of the time. I can only have so one piece of toast would do me for the day, like a little bit of gluten. I basically eat, I would say pescatarian. I can handle a little bit of seafood, but if I'm at home, I cook vegetarian a lot of the time. So yeah, it's even things like people trying to recommend diets and what's good for recovery and stuff like that. I can't eat a lot of it because it actually ends up just making me like, I look 8 months pregnant, I end up really bloated or on the toilet from the dairy, or just, it's just it's one of those things. And it's also one of those things where some people have it and then they recover from the surgery, from gallbladder surgery, and they can eat everything fine. Whereas my body was obviously just like, no, that's
not. It adds another layer of, I imagine, this is in my experience with working with people, there's this other layer of guilt, and it's the guilt of eating foods you shouldn't be eating due to intolerances or having your gallbladder removed. But it's, I'm eating this chocolate because I feel so low and I want to eat this to feel better, which I should be able to do. But then there's this secondary guilt of, I'm eating dairy, putting this through my body when my gallbladder can't handle it. Did you experience that type of guilt?
Yeah, a little bit. There's still definitely times during COVID. I remember all I wanted for my birthday dinner, I was staying with a friend of mine, and I was like, all I want is a steak. And he was like, you're going to be so sick. And I was like, nah, it'll be worth it. And it wasn't worth it. It definitely was not worth it. So yeah, occasionally I do. I wouldn't say I feel guilty about it. It's more just that I then, if I want to eat something, I can't eat it because I then, especially like being single as well, like I don't even have a partner who understands, and they're like, just eat it. If you want to eat it, that's fine. You still look beautiful, whatever. I also then think about it from that point of view of I can't eat it because then what if I meet someone, they're going to be like, ooh, look at her, or ooh, she's pregnant, or ooh. So I just tend to not eat stuff because I'm then worried about that point of view of it. And it's a flow on.
I did want to talk about dating and relationships, if you're comfortable, because we've spoken about this a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? So you're single, you're looking, you're ready to mingle. And I remember before I met my partner back in the day, I always thought I had to look and be a certain way to attract it, because you hear all these people, oh, you got to be the person you want to attract and your body has to be this and that. But when I met my partner, I was actually 10 kilos heavier than I am now. Not that I've intentionally tried to change or lose it, but I had to completely change my mind around that belief. But I just want to know, how are you going with date? Obviously, you've been busy recovering, but yeah, dating and love life, how are things going in Melbourne?
They're not like so I've been single 7 years now. Like I've had real short-term things in between, but again, like 3 years of COVID, there was no hope in meeting anyone there. And then starting my own business, I was quite content in just focusing on that for a while. So I think now, while I would love to share that success and build and grow with someone, I'm more in the mindset that it'll just happen when it happens, I think. And obviously, I think like anyone, I go through stages where I'm like, convince myself that I'm content, and I'm like, someone will just come along, and then I'm like, no, I'm really lonely. Let's try and look for it.
Have to.
Yeah, you have to put yourself out there to find it. But at the same time, I've obviously had so much going on this year to try and recover and find someone, and then be like, oh, by the way, we can be intimate, but you can't touch me up here because I'm still healing. Like, how awkward is that for them to then be like, oh, okay, you'd have to be an absolute gem of a human being to be like, oh, I completely understand, I like you enough, that's so fine. It's, I don't know.
Fine. It's awful that we have to think that may not be fine, or it might deter. But if someone is deterred or not okay with that, then they're not your person.
No, which I also get, but I also think that's asking a lot from someone to potentially be like, we can be intimate, but for the next 6 months you can't touch my breasts. You know what I mean? So it's,
wow, they can't be touched for 6 months.
They can, but because the scars are still healing, they just have to be really careful. It's not like you could go how you normally would, just free. yeah. I don't really know how to put that into words, but
no, fair enough. That you want to be you want to be really careful, because you've invested a lot in this. You don't want some douchebag messing them up. So I totally get where you're coming from. Because I remember when I did that episode with Jake Maddock on dating and stuff, you liked it and we spoke about it a little bit. And one thing, he's actually working with my friend Tash at the moment, and she has to go on 1 date a week, and she's saying how hard it is. And she lives in Adelaide. So she's opened her thing to Melbourne because she's willing to go interstate. But what do you think? Do you think you got to put effort into finding someone, or do you think it's just luck?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's a little bit of both. I think I wouldn't say luck. I would say that I'm a firm believer in that the universe will bring you what you need when you need it. So for me, I go to a lot of like business networking events and things like that. But also while I was in Sydney, I was still on Bumble. And if I matched with someone up there that I enjoyed talking to, just because they live in a different state, that doesn't mean that if you really liked each other, you couldn't find a way to make it work. You know what I mean? Like people have this real closed off bubble of being like, nah, you're interstate, that's too far for me. And so if you really want something to work, or you really are both after the same thing and you both like each other, then there'll be a way. Like I'm a firm believer in that it'll come along when the time is right and it'll present itself.
Yeah, same. I believe that too, 100%. There's obviously things you can do to increase the probability, leave your house, but these videos have to. But okay, I just want to touch base with that. But let's go back to the eating the chocolate in the surgery, feeling guilty. How did you, or have you gotten out of that, or do you still feel stuck?
Yeah, I still feel a little bit mentally stuck. Like this week has been a little bit of a down week for me. I think just in general, not necessarily eating or body related, but just I've got a lot of things going on. And again, not even bad things, but I think we glamorize everything on socials. And so it's really hard to then get your mind out of being like, okay, what is actually going on and what do I actually need to face? So for me, like my business is starting to take off. I'm getting a lot of bookings. That's not a bad thing, but it's a lot to handle all at once with all of those bookings coming through and then traveling. Like I've just got back from Sydney. I'm headed to Brisbane next week. So just a bit of travel stuff and then still healing. And so it's just, sometimes you just need that day for your body to recover mentally as well. But in terms of eating, yeah, I would say I'm still definitely not like where I was prior. I think once I get back into a gym routine, once I'm back from Brisbane, the start of July, and I'm able to get back there and have that back, then that's probably when it'll come back for me fully. Because also I feel
back. Like, what are you expecting yourself to change? If you felt happier right now about where you're at, what would be different?
In what way?
So you said, I'll get back. Once I'm back, things will get better. What do you mean by that? What do you want to change? Is it
for me? I need routine. And so I think not being able to go to the gym and have that routine has really thrown me. Like even just, for me also it's that excuse to, because I work from home as well, for me it's that excuse to at least get out of the house once a day. Like if I've got back-to-back meetings and I'm in front of the computer all day, then at least going to the gym is, okay, I'll get out of the house to go to the gym. Even if it's, sometimes I don't even go first thing in the morning. If I know I've got lots of meetings, I'll get up, I'll start working, I'll do meetings, and I'll go at lunchtime to break up my day.
Yes.
But knowing that that's then my break and I'm out for an hour and just listen to a podcast on the treadmill, and like I get to see some sun, and because you are so busy and running your own business is one of those things, then yeah, I think just having that there will then, for me, it's always a flow-on effect. Once I'm able to get back there and do that, I then feel like I want to eat healthier again as well. I then don't reach for the chocolate as much. But it's also, I also find that when it comes to winter, I just tend to eat worse in winter in general, because you want those comfort foods, you want the warming foods. So it's always a struggle for me personally in winter. I don't know if anyone else feels the same, but especially in Melbourne, it's been like
especially Melbourne. Oh, it's so cold. That's one thing moving up here. It's so easy to get outside. Like right now I'm looking and I can see the sun. You want to get outside, you want to be active. And one thing I was reflecting on yesterday is I love being able to walk everywhere. Like I walk to my hair appointment, I walk to my dentist appointment. Everything is so close. Whereas, in Melbourne, it depends where you live, but you do have to drive quite a bit, which again reduces the amount of day-to-day steps. And over the last 4 years, that's the only thing that's really changed in my life is the amount I walk to places, because I moved out. I didn't have a car since 2020. And yeah, it's the little things. But what was I going to say? I was going to say routine does play a huge role. And I think exercise plays a huge role in routine. And obviously you're recovering and you've got to just wait for your body to be strong again. And it's really hard to slow down. I think that's the key. When you live the go, go, go life, when you run your own business, there's this constant, I've got to be doing something. Like even last night, I just wanted to chill and watch Gossip Girl. And I'm like, I should be editing a video. And and it's that permission that you need to recover and rest, especially if you're sick or you've had surgery.
Yeah, it's the guilt that you should always be doing something for your business rather than being like, no, my body just needs to chill. Yeah.
Yeah. And I always say resting is investing, and this is what I need to be go, go, go. Or not go, 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 but these rest periods or recovery periods is what you need to be able to be at your best.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Look, I think you've done incredible. Starting your own business is hard enough, plus having major surgery on top of that as well, and traveling. I think you ought to really be kind to yourself and have compassion. And even though your weight has changed, it is weight that you tried to lose because of the surgery, and you're beautiful no matter what weight, shape and size you are. So I just hope you're kind to yourself, Amie, because it's bloody hard being a woman.
It is. And I guess that's the reason why, I know we talked about it, but why I felt like I wanted to jump on is just so that no matter what surgery, like if any women that are listening to this or even men just go through this, I think they just need to know that recovery is different for everyone, and just to expect that they might gain that weight a little bit. It'll happen. They'll lose it. They might feel a little bit down after it, but ultimately they have to remember why they chose to have the surgery in the first place. And again, for me, my back pain's gone, my neck pain's gone, so it definitely is worth it. So yeah, just making sure that everyone knows that they can recover at different stages and they're not going through it alone. It's everyone's recovery story is the same, effectively.
Exactly. And it's a stage and a phase. And I always believe life goes in seasons for different reasons. But I'm so grateful that you spoke up about this, because there was so much I didn't know, just with the antiseptic, with recovery, with all of that. So this episode has been so useful and informative. But in terms of improving your body image or dysmorphia, is there anything that you found to be helpful or that has been useful throughout this journey for you?
Through the surgery journey or just my journey in general?
Yeah, your journey. So I guess having this surgery and then eating throughout the surgery, the weight loss, the weight change. What have you been saying to yourself mentally to help you through this process?
For me, it's been a process of just reminding myself that it's short term and that it's not forever. It's not like I'm never going to go back to the gym. It's not like I'm never going to get back there. Also reminding myself, like I just said, that I did it for a reason, and that reason ultimately has already paid off. I'm much more comfortable with the way that my breasts look and feel, for starters, but at the same time, the pain is gone. The underlying issues, while I might have a little bit of a belly now, which again can easily be gotten rid of in a couple of weeks, it's the body issues that I had surrounding my breasts and what I was able to wear and all that sort of thing, that's already gone. So yeah, just reminding yourself that it's a short-term thing, really, the recovery period. and also just having people that are supportive and helpful. Like I've got some great girls that I go to the gym with who have been messaging me saying they miss me, and just having a really supportive network around you as well in terms of checking in and things like that, I think as well is really important.
Okay, amazing. And before we wrap up, Amie, I always ask one last question to our guests. And I wanted to ask you, what is one piece of advice you would recommend to anyone to help with their mental health or state?
One piece of advice. I think personally, from my experience, I would say don't prolong getting help. So for me, my mental health journey, I had a really bad experience where I saw family members who were addicted to antidepressants and anti-anxiety and things like that. I was always adamant I was never going to touch them, and I didn't want to get help, and I just heard bad stories of counselors and things like that. But as I got older and the start of COVID, I just realized that trying it was not the worst thing in the world. And just because it happened to a family member doesn't mean that it was going to happen to me. And because I was so self-aware and self-conscious of not getting addicted, it probably was highly likely that I wouldn't. I made that decision to start on antidepressants and go and see someone. And it was the best thing I probably ever did was, just being able to talk to someone freely. And it really just changed the way that I looked at things and looked at mental health. And I would say don't delay getting help if you feel you need it.
Yeah, I love that. And I agree. And that's probably one of my biggest regrets was back then it wasn't openly spoken about. And I was like, no, things are fine. I'm fine. It's just part of my life, especially with disordered eating disorders, because we all think weight loss will solve the problem. So yes, don't delay it. If you're listening to this and you've been putting it off, whether it's a breast check, whether it's a mental health check, go get it. Get your pap smear as well. All the lady things that are important to do. And if you love this episode, please make sure you hit the follow button, send us some feedback. Amie, where can people find you on Instagram if they want an event or just want to connect?
Yeah, so I'm just Events with Amie. However, to confuse you, my name is Amie, based in Melbourne, all of Victoria, but I do travel if you need. TikTok, Instagram, Google, website, everything, Events with Amie.
Love that. And I'll put the links in the chat. Thank you so much, Amie.
No worries. Thanks, Steph. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. I am truly grateful for you being here. If you got something out of today's show, please take a moment to leave a rating or review. To access more resources or support, check out the show notes below. See you next time.